the IPS community is probably one of the first settings areas you're going to go to just set up some of the very, very basics. The community name is one you're definitely going to want to fill out because that's what your community is referred to. It shows up in the title bar, in the breadcrumb navigation, and lots of other places. But most importantly, when emails are sent out, this is how it refers back to your community. So it's very important that you change that. The meta tag URL is useful when you use sharing services like Facebook, Twitter, etc. This is just the small icon that shows up. By default, it's an IP board logo, but you're probably going to want to change that to something specific to you. The website name and address are items that, if you fill them out, it'll show a link in the navigation bar back to your main website homepage if you have one. The form action domain is for if, let's say you're in a load balance environment, you can override the upload action domain to one specific server. So if you have 5 web servers, you might want one of them to be a master server to handle upload actions. Most users will not want to mess with this because it does require some specific configuration on the server side. So unless you have a specific reason to use this, you probably want to skip that. The upload directory is where, when files are uploaded, this is the file system path that tells IPS software where to store all your file attachments, be they file attachments to topics and posts, or blog file attachments, or gallery images, or profile photos. Everything is stored within this uploads directory. And you can, of course, change that if you need to. Most of the time, you're going to want to leave that alone because it is detected when the software is installed because it tries to find that uninstall. The upload URL corresponds to the upload directory. It defines where the URL to that uploads are. Again, most of the time, you want to leave this alone, unless you, of course, you change the upload directory, rename it, move it to a new system, things like that. If you want to use a CDN, you'd want to change this URL here to access uploads via your CDN instead. I'll touch on that more in just a minute. Things like caching path, caching URL, these are advanced features where you'd only want to change that if you have a specific need. Let's say you were using network attached storage or a similar method and you want caching data to be stored in a different location. Most of the time you don't want to mess with these. Minify is a script that we use to combine all the various JavaScript and style sheet files that are loaded throughout the software to one call to the server. And what's nice about Minify is it takes, sometimes you might have dozens of various style sheets and JavaScript files and all these various things that are needed to be loaded to make the software look right and act right. Minify combines them all into one nicely cached file. However, there are some servers that do not play nice with Minify, and there are certain circumstances, like if you're using a CDN, that you might not want Minify enabled, and that's why we have this option here. On the IPS company forums, in fact, we have Minify disabled because we use a CDN. These are the CDN settings section, and normally you would leave these blank if you're not using a CDN. But if you are using a CDN, which is a content distribution network, and you want to serve your images, your style sheets, your JavaScript through there, you'd want to shut off Minify, like I said, and you'd override the URLs here to point to your CDN. These other settings at the bottom are things that you normally don't need to worry much about. The debug level is useful if you want to see what the software is doing sort of behind the scenes. Most of the time you want to leave that off because it does tend to confuse users who are not that technical. They might not understand what that data at the bottom of the screen means. But it's really useful if you want to see sort of behind the scenes look. The license to item is optional. If you want to say license to your name or your company name, you can do that. You don't have to, because on the back end we already know who you are through our license key system. But it's optional. Some people like to show that there. And the final option, the default forums navigation, just simply removes the forums tab and the links in the tab bar If you, for some reason, don't want the forms to be visible, let's say that your site is mostly about an image gallery, and you want to sort of focus people to the gallery, you can enable this setting to remove the forms links so they don't show. So that's the general settings. It's a pane that has lots of information in it that most people don't need to use. However, it also has a few key things like your name and your URLs that you want to make sure are right for your community before you go live.